So good afternoon, everyone. This is Jeffrey Moss here. I'm really excited to be here. For those of you that don't already know Robert Schindel, he's been an expert in internship programming for 23 years, really working closely with companies and other organizations to share best practices, provide content, and offer other tools and solutions for students and managers alike. And I'm Jeffrey. Again, for those of you who don't know me, I'm the founder and CEO of Parker Dewey, which pioneered this concept of the micro internship 6 years ago. And while we couldn't have anticipated this COVID craziness or the social unrest or any of these other things that have impacted the college to career transition over the past 12 months in particular, our experience working with thousands of companies and college students to facilitate remote project-based professional experiences has really provided some insights that we think will be useful, both as you're thinking about this summer's virtual internship program and in general. We also have seen a ton of things really transition well to last summer's remote internship programs based upon what we've been hearing from companies and students alike. So given the experience that we have, both Robert and I, we wanted to share some insights that will hopefully be useful for you, whether you're involved in campus recruiting or in program management as you're finishing up the recruiting efforts or planning for summer internship programs, or for those university partners who are joining us, really to share with your corporate partners, your students, and other stakeholders, so folks both have some expertise, but also the inside view that can help students get the most out of what's going to be another unusual summer experience. So where are we? There is still uncertainty around remote or in-site. What we just heard from NACE was 72% of companies hosted virtual last year, but only 25% of them are committed to virtual this year, which by the way is shocking to me that it's only 25%. Now granted, in that balance, there's a huge percentage that are hybrid, there's a huge percentage that are still wait and see. But the big difference this year from last year is no organization should be surprised. I think last year, a lot of companies had a pass, just having the internship program and sort of putting it together and trying to make it good. Students gave them a lot of credit. They understood if it wasn't perfect. They were happy just not to have it canceled. This year will be a bit different. What that also means is this year there will also be some other issues that companies will need to consider, renegs. Renegs will be higher than usual, either because companies are coming into the process late in the process where they're making last minute decisions to offer internships. So students who committed may be leaving. We may have students facing issues, again, tied to COVID, tied to mental health issues, tied to family challenges or other things, both academically and personally. We're going to see a lot of unfilled roles. These might be unfilled roles because you weren't able to make as many offers or see the conversion that you expected because of the challenges with on-campus or pseudo on-campus recruiting. Or it may even be hiring managers that are showing up right now saying, yeah, I didn't think I needed an intern, but I actually do. Or hiring managers that thought they needed an intern and said, yeah, I don't want one. We're also seeing, again, diversity really top of mind for everyone. And we need to remember that this pandemic has impacted everyone, but students of color and lower socioeconomic groups have particularly felt the pain and brunt of it. On top of it, Zoom fatigue, it's impacting recruiting as we all saw, and it's going to continue to be in place this summer. That means you can't have managers doing virtual babysitting, not that they would anyway, of summer interns. So really it comes down to how do we ensure that interns have a great experience once they start, and to focus more on the onboarding and the process, and really make sure that this summer is a great experience for the interns, for the managers, and for you and your teams. So I'm going to be done talking right now. And since Robert's the expert on internships, having, again, researched and spent time in it over the past 23 plus years, sort of, can you share some of your findings on what makes these programs a success?
Absolutely, Jeff. And everything that you identified in that kind of the introductory slide and then that very first slide, one thing that I think that we should focus on is this concept of grace. Again, last year you mentioned it, that students were just super happy. Hey, you're not canceling the internship you offered me. Oh, thank goodness. I'm just happy to have something. I don't care whether it went from 15 weeks down to 8 weeks, at least I've got something. But now we've had a whole year to kind of discuss and figure this out and talk about it and kind of figure out things. I think we've all, the Zoom fatigue that you discussed is kind of a double-edged sword, because yes, we are kind of tired of it, but it's also become the way that we communicate and the way that we interact and the way that we engage. So when I talk about the concept of grace, students are dealing with a lot on their end. I mean, we are seeing spikes in depression and loneliness and other mental health issues that we just generally don't see in higher ed, and we're seeing more of that. So when that student might not respond as quickly, or I mean, we as employers do have to say, okay, wait a minute, what are they going through? But at the same time, we're also going through a lot of stuff too. I mean, our lives have been upended. And so that concept of just taking a step back and saying, okay, we are where we are. We don't know exactly where we're going, but we know that we can't just stop, because that's just not good for anybody. So when we think about an internship, and again, when we use the word internship, it is this big, broad umbrella word that really means all things experiential learning, work-based learning. So if you call your thing a co-op or an externship or a practicum or even student teaching, it falls under this same category. And as we have been researching this for years and years and years, we found that when we ask the question, what makes a really good internship? What we really are asking is what makes a good experience, not just for the intern, but also for our organization. And we've been able to really kind of boil it down into these 4 areas. The first is cultural transmission. What is it that we are, transmitting about our culture? And it used to be kind of easy. We almost took this one for granted, because we made the assumption that in cultural transmission, it was about the student being present, and that we transmitted culture kind of because they were there. Well, I think we've all understood that, holy cow, we are not in one place at the same time anymore. So it's really led us to define kind of, and having that conversation. Well, what aspects of our culture do we want to transfer? And then what does that mean, and how do we do it? So one of the benefits that I've seen, and I try to look for the silver lining in situations like this, is that the organizations that I've been working with have focused more time on being more intentional and really descriptive about what it is about their culture that they find unique, special, and different, and then how they're going to transfer that to the next generation of their employees.
But that brings up, I mean, it's one of the things that brings up, I know when we talked about cultural transmission, we talked about fit.
Yeah.
And the fact that fit should be mutual. It's students assessing fit of the company and company assessing fit. And there's a lot of discussion about fit being a dirty word.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what do you think about that? Because isn't fit a big part of cultural transmission?
It is. And I again, I guess you could look at it both ways. Yes, fit can be a dirty word because it can perpetuate some stereotypes. Oh, that student doesn't look like everybody else, so maybe they might not be a fit, or maybe they don't dress like everybody else. They might not be a fit. And I think that we use that term fit has been used almost discriminatory to exclude people from opportunities. But at the same time, fit, when we look at it in a little bit more positive angle, is does what we offer meet the needs of the student and what they are looking for? I think for years, employers have had the luxury of kind of stepping back and saying, well, I'm the employer, I'm over here, you're the job seeker or the intern searching to get in, so you're way over there, it's your responsibility to come to me. And I think that one of the things that we've learned over the last couple of years, even before the pandemic, was we as a as employers really have to change our mindset. It's better if we go and meet them where they are and we take them. I mean, I know that you've seen, what is it, the Inside Higher Ed report, and then there was another one done by, I think, Hart Research that talked about the gap in employment readiness,
Mhm.
where, what is it, 90 whatever percent of presidents and provosts thought that their graduates were employment ready, but less than a third of HR managers agreed with that statement. Well, whose responsibility is it to attract, develop, and retain the next generation of employees
Well,
for your organization?
you're also bringing up another issue, which is important, which is when we talk about job ready, does job ready mean that Jeff knows how to use Excel or Robert knows how to code in Python? Or does it mean that we have core skills like problem solving and attention to detail? And then the other aspect of it, it goes back to, again, that cultural transmission, and cultural not meaning sort of ethnic or racial or any of those things, but the culture of the organization. Is it an organization where everyone leaves at 5 o'clock? Or is it an organization where people are on email till they go to bed? Is it an organization that's kumbaya, go team go? Or is it one with more individual performers? And it's not good or bad. It's just making sure that transmission is effectively communicated to the student during the summer internship or even during the recruiting process. And both sides can assess, is it the right fit?
Yeah, Javid, you bring up in your description of that. A couple of weeks ago, I was working with a team, and we were talking about cultural transmission, and somebody on the team kind of raised their hand, and I said, yeah, what's your question? And she said, so I understand that it's important to transmit kind of who we are, but have we ever thought about what it is that we want to be, and how we are going to communicate that? And it started off a whole like extra hour of discussion, which was phenomenal, where we went through exactly the kinds of things that you were talking about. What makes us as an organization unique, special, and different? And then how do we communicate that to this individual who may be coming into the workforce for the very first time?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's a great point. So I think back to my summer internship in investment banking, where it was great. They took us to baseball games and they took us to all of these events and made sure we're having all this fun. But it wasn't necessarily effectively communicating the culture of, I'm going to be in the office till 2:30 in the morning every night and back in. And like, it just was an inauthentic transmission of that culture, and it doesn't do anyone good, because then sort of the new hire starts and winds up surprised, which goes back to, again, why we see 55% turnover in the first year.
Right. And we see, for example, we spend a lot of time working with companies on developing their internship experience that they're going to deliver. And one of the kind of situations that happens, as you said, like kind of like 6 months to a year down the road, is that company comes back and says, well, I think we're delivering a great experience, but why can't we, why are these students leaving after 6 months or a year? Why aren't we retaining them? And one of the things that I bring up is, well, how different from your full-time experience that your employees have, how different is that from the experience your interns are having? So, I mean, let's face it, I mean, students are smart. They know what a bait and switch looks like. And I think that we're kind of beyond that, and we have to recognize and align what the internship experience is and the experience that we're delivering, and what that looks
Yeah,
like in the future. Is it congruent to the
100
experience that a student is having or a full-time employee is having?
100% agree. And I think you did a nice job on the deck. And again, we'll share the deck afterwards with some very concrete examples of ways to make sure that you're conveying those company values to the summer interns, and really just actionable things. And that's not to say there's still a place for the baseball games. There's still
Oh, yeah.
event for sort of the virtual happy hours or whatever takes place to build those authentic relationships between existing employees and interns, or even just across the internship community. But make sure these other aspects are included. I think it's also a,
Absolutely.
I think it's also a great segue to sort of the second thing that you highlighted, sort of in your key attributes, which was meaningful work.
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean by that?
Well, again, so meaningful work is helping helping the student to understand kind of the why. And meaningful work, at one point in time, I think that we were, and Ross Perlin in his Intern Nation, oh my gosh, I was almost 15 years ago now, talked about, this, I get coffee, I'm kind of I do the work that nobody else wants to do, and I'm just, filing and stapling and just collating, and that's, not very, it's menial work. Well, that is part of the experience that students need to have. I mean, one of the reasons why students are motivated to do an internship is to gain a realistic preview of the world of work. How do we turn menial into meaningful is connecting the why. Why?
And we're not, and by the way, we're not talking about fetching coffee or making photocopies. We're talking about things that might seem menial to you or me or
Right.
other folks on the call, but to a college student or recent grad. So sorry, I just wanted to clarify.
No. You're absolutely right. And so, for example, if Jeff's my supervisor and says, "Hey, Robert, I need you to enter this data into this spreadsheet." The first time that Jeff asked me to do that, I'm going to be like, "Oh, wow, yay, something to do." But the third or fourth time, I'm going to be like, "Man, this is really boring." But if Jeffrey comes back and says, "Hey, this data that you're entering into the spreadsheet, this is where it goes. This is who's going to see it. These are the types of decisions that we make. And these are the types of, and this is where we're eventually going to go in this internship." And all of a sudden, I know why. And all of a sudden, it's connected to my academic work. It's connected to my major. It's connected to kind of this bigger picture. And all of a sudden, I'm much more engaged. And we see that when we define the deliverables. And when we say, okay, we're going to work on this project because of the why. This is why we're doing it.
Well, and what I love about that approach is there's two other benefits. First of all, for the college student, again, it helps them understand, especially if they're pursuing a major that doesn't sound like a job title. So for me as a philosophy or psych or history or English major, I'm now seeing those crosswalks between what I learned in university, whether it's research, writing, whatever, and the quote unquote real world. The second reason I like this focus on meaningful work versus menial is not only is it making a better experience for the summer intern, but it's actually also leading to a better experience for the hiring manager.
Absolutely. So to go back to the slide that you had up before. And so one of the ways that we can really kind of look at what meaningful work might look like. So for example, this is it comes out of multiple kind of pieces of research and just kind of meta-analysis of what is it that students value today. The students that are in, let's say, a university, in college or university right now, what are the values that they have? And what we try to do is say, okay, if this is what they value, and a focus of what we are doing as an employer is meeting them where they are, if we understand their values and can align what they value with work that we do, can we make that connection quicker? So for example, we know that today's students really value collaboration. Well, great, let's get them involved in some team projects. Let's not just say, well, Jeff's my intern, and I say, well, Jeff, you're my intern, so you're gonna, just do the stuff that I give you. Well, why doesn't Jeff go to the rest of his team and say, hey, what kinds of things are you all working on that Robert might be able to add value to and be a part of? So that level of collaboration. We know that students like to take risks. Is there an opportunity for my team to come up with some creative problem solving? Or, what, we've got this problem over here, Robert, and, we're not really quite sure, what we want to do with it. Why don't you take a swing at it? I mean, that is aligning something that may seem simple, but we're connecting it to something greater than just the work. And that's what makes it meaningful.
Well, and that also gets to some of your other points about the 5 qualities of meaningful work.
Yeah, and this is so important as we look at, as a supervisor, I'm posed with, oh my gosh, I've got an intern. What am I going to have them do? And I generally go to kind of the stuff that maybe nobody else wants to do, or the low-hanging fruit, things that I know that they might be able to handle. But I can make it more meaningful by connecting the why so that it is self-transcendent and it is poignant, that it's for example, getting back to the Excel spreadsheet. Well, if I know that I'm not just entering data into a spreadsheet, that I am putting information together that my company is going to use, that's going to impact tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people with a new product line or a new service capacity that we can develop, all of a sudden that I'm working on something that is greater than just me. And that it's poignant, that I can, that it's tangible, and it's something that I can understand. Also, we know that meaningful work is episodic. It doesn't happen in, oh, here's a 30-minute project. It's something that develops over time, and that we continue to come back to it. We continue to work on it. I mean, I challenge everyone here, look at what's on your desk. I mean, that the type of work that we generally do happens over a longer period of time. It's got that arc that we're working on it a little bit at a time to develop. The last two, being reflective, this is where a really savvy mentor or supervisor is worth their weight in gold with an intern. To sit back and say, hey, Jeffrey, you were working on that project. Tell me the 3 things that you learned working on that project.
Yeah.
How can you use that, those skills, or what skills do you think that connects to? And having the student to reflect on what it is that they did. And when you can connect that to making it personal and making it and saying, this is why you did this project, because we need to develop these skills in you, because this is what's going to make you more valuable in the future. Well, all of a sudden, I'm sitting here going, holy cow, they're investing in me. I'm not doing work. You're investing in my growth and development. Holy
and look,
cow.
This is, yeah, I, by the way, totally agree with you. And one of the things that I think that's important with any employee, whether it's an intern or full-time, it's a great and vital aspect. But with summer interns, that reflective aspect is so much more important, because these are individuals with limited to no professional experience. So that time for reflection really helps them reflect upon, is this the right company for me? Is this the right role? I thought I wanted to do marketing, but maybe I'm realizing from these projects, marketing's not the right fit. Or I never considered the role in sales, but I just did this project in sales. It is the right fit. And that's how you drive in that better fit, because it's in no one's best interest to sort of fill the seats and then have people leave 6 months in or not be happy in their job.
Well, and if you go back to that previous slide, one of the concepts that when we talk about delivering an experience of value, yes, it's valuable for the company or for me as an intern to come in and do work. I'm gaining something from that. You're gaining something from that. But to really kind of make it a bigger, can I work on different things with different teams, with different groups, to really get a cross section of what's happening? Go ahead and back.
Yeah, I was going to say that's a great segue to the professional development one.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the perfect thing, because when you're working on these projects, or these tasks or these assignments, again, part of the way to make them meaningful, part of the way to make them personal and reflective is to show how they fit within the bigger picture.
Right. One of the analogies that I use a lot of times is that of a baseball team. And for those of you that know baseball, I mean, when my beloved Phillies draft a kid out of high school or college, they don't send them right to Citizens Bank Park. I mean, the big league team, they put them in the minor leagues, and they just don't send them to the minor leagues.
I thought the Phillies were the minor leagues.
Hey, now.
I'm a Yankees fan. Sorry, everyone. I couldn't resist. You put it up there for me.
Well,
sorry,
continue.
continue.
So I understand, but when the Yankees learn how to play real baseball and they let their pitchers hit, come talk to me. Anyway, so when we talk about this with the minor league experience, they just don't send them down to the minor leagues and say, hey, Robert, go down there and why don't you just play a little baseball and throw and pitch and catch. They have an individual development plan for me. Why? Because I'm an investment in the future of that particular ball club. What if we took that same mentality into our internship programs? that every intern that we had was a draft pick that we have the opportunity to develop into the big leaguer that we want and need to really make an impact in the future of our company. All of a sudden, we look at the situation differently, don't we? That it's that we're looking at it from a more developmental approach. Yes, they're still doing some work and we're still getting value as an employer and they're still getting some of that transactional things, but it's also transformational at the same time. It's not an either or equation. And that's what's so important about the professional development. And really, you mentioned NACE earlier, in the, 20, almost 25 years that I've been in this space, one of the things that I have seen NACE just absolutely knock it out of the park is with the career readiness competencies, because it allows us to have a shared language about what are the competencies that individuals need as they make the transition to the workplace, and how can we be deliberate and intentional and dedicated to make sure that at the end of the experience that the student has been exposed to those types of competencies and has had the opportunity to practice them. Because we know, as Jeffrey, as you just mentioned, so many students are coming into their internship and you as their supervisor might be the very first supervisor that they've had that's not named mom, dad, or professor. And that's a big deal.
Yeah. So we talk about this stuff. What's sort of an action item or something sort of folks can do to make sure that this happens?
And one of the things, and if you've been to an Intern Bridge event, either one of our total internship management workshops or a webcast that we've done, one of the ways that we talk with employers about how do we deliver this experience of value? We know what the experience is, but how do we deliver it? And if I had a room full of 50 people and I said, please write down the definition of an internship, I would probably get 55 different responses. But if I were to ask you, and now let's just do this, Jeffrey, what was your favorite class as an undergrad?
Oh, I don't know. Probably some finance class, but I was a nerd.
So that finance class that you had, it was your favorite class. Do you remember what you did on the very first day of class?
Not a clue.
Really?
Yeah. Sorry, I'm a bad example. My
you,
memory from college is not as good as many.
A little hazy, is it there, Jeffrey?
You said it, not me.
But did you get something from the professor on that first day?
I got a syllabus.
You did. You did get a syllabus. And do you remember some things that were in that syllabus?
Sure. Now that I'm thinking about it, yeah. Discounted cash flow.
Okay. So there was a concept that you were going to learn about. There was probably information about how to connect with your professor. There was information about what you were going to learn, when you were going to learn it, when you were going to be evaluated, yes, how you were going to be evaluated, all of those things, right?
Yeah.
So what would happen if we developed a syllabus as an employer for our intern? Let me illustrate just how powerful this is. I'm also an adjunct faculty member, and in a class I was teaching negotiations and conflict a couple of years ago, and I did not post the syllabus on my website for the class. I didn't have it printed out at their desks. Class started, I just started lecturing. And in about 10 minutes into class, a student that I'd had previously, and her name was Amber, and Amber, let's just say that meek would have been an upgrade. I mean, this girl was quiet. I don't think she talked in any one of the other two classes ever once, never raised her hand. She raises her hand about 10 minutes into class. And I said, yeah, Amber, what's going on? And she said, where's the syllabus?
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, that's a bold voice. In my head, I'm thinking, wow, and I said, why do you need a syllabus? And her answer was so laser focused. She said, so I know what I need to do to be successful in this class.
Yeah.
Think about how powerful that is. And when we talk about meeting the student where they are, as they make this transition from college to the world of work, let's use the language that they're used to. Oh, I start a new, I mean, we, for better or worse, we've conditioned students that when they start a new experience, they get this thing called the syllabus that outlines what that experience is going to be like. That's how we deliver the experience of value.
No, I 100% agree. And what's interesting, you have me now thinking back to college. One of the courses we had when I went to Indiana, it was called ACOR, and it was in junior year, it was first semester, I believe. And basically, it was this integrated professional experience. And again, I wasn't thinking about this when I put together the slides, so thanks for getting me to think about it. What was great about it is, as a junior for the first time, it was putting together work across 3 or 4 different classes: marketing, finance, operations, and one other that I'm too hazy to remember. But that was the benefit of ACOR, because what it did is it showed us how the work in our marketing class aligned to the work in the finance class and how those two pieces connected. And it was so vital.
Right.
And it's one of the things that we found. I mean, look, we saw this last summer as companies shifted their internships programs remote for the first time, but it's something we even saw almost take place virtually even before that. Is that companies, as opposed to thinking about, okay, Jeff, you're Robert's intern for the summer, you're sort of going to follow Robert around all summer, and Robert's going to throw tasks at you here and there, and he'll take you out to lunch a few times, and it just not a great experience. And hopefully companies aren't doing that anymore, although we still hear the horror stories. One of the things that we found is, as you're thinking about this summer, starting to think about how to create a series of discrete projects that students can work on throughout the summer that really form one internship. And what's great about that approach is, not only is it giving that professional development for the student, helping them understand how their piece fits into other parts of the organization, getting exposure, but what it also does is it supports so many of the other themes that we already discussed. I mean, again, the students get to see the culture as they're getting exposures to others in my example here, the marketing team, but even exposures to other teams and other departments. They can see how their work fits into the larger picture. So I'm doing the competitive analysis for marketing. How does that fit to my work in sales? Or how does that fit to the company's strategy? And it also lets them, I mean, back to the point before about the importance of career exploration, take a look at roles they may not have considered. I'm a marketing major. Does that mean I have to do a marketing job when I graduate? Maybe strategy, maybe finance, maybe HR. Or in the case of the student pursuing a major that doesn't sound like a job title, what is it I'm going to do? And not only is it, not only is it helping the students, what we also found is this approach also helps companies with that transition to virtual internships this year. Because what it does is it lets you engage a variety of the managers. So it just came off a NACE call before this one, where we were talking about one of the concerns a lot of companies are having is the managers don't necessarily want a virtual intern. They don't want to manage it. They call it virtual babysitting, or that sounds like a huge pain in the butt. Like, I don't want that. Well, if you were to position it as companies position it as, you can get college students to help you on individual projects, and you get rid of that babysitting perception that they may or may not have, you're reframing it. And now all of a sudden you can, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to completely agree with that. And, for years, I think one of the things that I've seen employers do is, the employer, the company or organization says, hey, we're going to have an intern. And, oh, Jeffrey, you're the head of the finance department. So guess what? You're going to have an intern. And it's like, oh my gosh, the weight of the world just landed on my shoulders. And I've got my own staff that I need to deal with. I've got my own boss that I manage up. I've got my own work that needs to be done. And now you want me to babysit a college kid.
Yeah.
Through this diversity and engaging these other parts of the organization, the onus of delivering the experience of value shifts from that individual supervisor to the organization. And that also creates an equity. So, for example, let's say, Jeff, you and I are both interns. Your supervisor loves being a supervisor, loves the mentoring, loves the coaching, spends all kinds of times with you, has the great meaningful work.
Yeah.
And mine was voluntold that she was going to have an intern 3 days before I showed up. Who's going to have a better experience?
Yeah, 100% agree. And by the way, for the HR leaders, like which manager is going to be creating a better experience for you as an HR leader versus the one that's constantly coming to you saying, "Yeah, why'd you assign me this part?" 100% agree. The other thing that's interesting is that also, again, this type of an approach lets you engage people that may not have been engaged in the past. It may be a great opportunity to engage those who are early in their career who may not have managed yet. So someone who's 2, 3, 4 years out of school, who doesn't have any direct reports, who has never formally managed, but can they manage a college student on a project? Sure.
Yeah.
What we also found is from a recruiting perspective, it, it lets sort of the HR teams get feedback from a variety of different people. So using your example, you as an HR leader are not forced to only get feedback on Robert from that one supervisor who didn't really want him anyway. You're now able to get insights from a variety of different people on the career readiness. And again, not career readiness meaning can Robert use Excel or PowerPoint, but career readiness on those core skills. And in this type of an environment, it really lets the summer intern showcase those core skills of the NACE competencies, the teamwork, the communication, the empathy. One of the new skills that's getting added this year, sneak preview, is one tied to adaptability. So asking an intern to not just do marketing analytics, even though that's what he or she was brought on for, giving them the opportunity to do marketing content or sales research or competitive analysis, let's see their adaptability. So you're creating a great experience for the intern to try something new, but you're also assessing those core skills. What I also like, and look, this approach is powerful, whether it's on site or remote, but
Yeah.
it's especially true this summer. I mean, not only does it deliver better outcomes, but to something you hit on before, it's easier to manage. I mean,
Yeah.
you're alleviating the concern of the hiring managers about managing remote teams, or how are they just going to be sitting like, is my intern going to be sitting on the couch watching The Simpsons and have nothing to do, or am I going to be Zoom babysitting? Yeah, I just dated myself with the Simpsons reference.
Hey, don't worry
Um,
about it. My 10-year-old is watching it from the beginning. So
yeah,
he's watching every episode, which is both incredibly frightening and pretty cool at the same time.
it is. But yeah, I mean, now I digress thinking about Simpsons episodes. But no one wants. I mean, again, your manager doesn't want that, and your manager doesn't want to be Zoom babysitting. And to your earlier point, everyone's zoomed out anyway, and the students don't want it. They don't want to be sitting around. I mean, they are hungry for these experiences. We did a survey last summer on what students want, like how they want to be recruited, and um, and what they said is, we're not going to career fairs. We don't want info sessions. The only ones they're going to show up at anyway, or if they're already planning to apply, and even then they may not. What they really want is experiences. They want to develop the skills. They want to build those connections. They want to explore career paths. And the second thing that's great, and this gets to another point, is you can use this kind of an approach. So while you have a syllabus for the student of specific projects he or she may be doing over the course of the summer, you also have this repository
Yes.
that what it does is it lets the student pick up projects if they have extra time, or for hiring managers that may not have gotten the intern this summer, or for those sort of fires that come up that we need an extra set of hands. We know the managers have the needs, and this type of an approach lets you as an HR leader quickly pivot and respond to that without applying or without creating new work for you or anyone else.
One of the, when we talk about the total internship management methodology from the employer's perspective, we use the syllabus as that delivery mechanism. But what we find out as we kind of move through and get deeper into the delivering of the experience is that the syllabus also becomes almost like a Swiss Army knife. It's
Yeah.
one tool that has a lot of different uses. So, there's one organization that I'm working with that uses their syllabus during the recruiting process. And they will email it out and say, this is what an internship looks like. This is the type of experiences that you're going to be having. And what they're finding is that the first person that student shares that with is their parent.
Yeah.
And what they're doing is, and then the parent becomes an advocate, because then they're saying, oh my gosh, look at how well structured this is. Look at the types and the quality of the projects I'm going to be working on. Look at what
Yeah.
my child is going to learn.
Oh
And
my God. Yeah.
now you've got the parent saying, you've got to take this internship. This is an amazing opportunity for you. And they start to influence their
Yeah.
decision. On
Well,
the
that's,
back, on the
oh,
back
sorry, go
end,
ahead.
on the back end, it's also an assessment tool. A lot of times, you know, at the end of the experience, we're left saying, well, how'd they do? Well, I guess they did all right. Well, okay, well, now we can quantify by the projects that they worked on, the performance that they had. We can go back and look at what did they learn? You know, we
Oh my
can,
God.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's just,
It's a
it's such a
competitive,
it's a
yeah,
multifaceted tool.
it's a competitive advantage. I
Yeah.
mean, that's what it is. It's a competitive advantage for campus recruiting.
Yeah.
Because like in every way, shape, and form, being able to your point, go to a prospective intern or someone that's early in the process and showing them that syllabus and showing them the opportunity to work on a variety of interesting assignments that are real, that have defined deliverables that they can put on their resume and LinkedIn. Like that's huge.
Yeah.
That's different than saying, yeah, you'll be with us in marketing all summer and we'll go to some ball games.
Yeah,
Like
exactly. Well,
great,
and
wonderful, but that's not what they want.
so there's a lot, one of the most researched aspects in higher education today is that of persistence to graduation, right? I mean, there are multi-million
Yeah.
pages that have been written about this. I mean, there's amazing researchers like Vincent Tinto, and who is, but if you
Yeah.
boil that all down, there's two concepts that really help a student persist through an academic program to graduation. And those two things are, a student will persist if they believe that somebody cares about them and they have a vision for their own future.
Yep.
And this is a way that we can do that as an employer, to persist through the academic and make that leap into the world of work and make it much more seamless. Because
Well,
if we can showcase to a student, to an intern, hey, you know what, we care about you and we are investing in your growth and
it's a
development,
win-win.
it's a win-win. But
It's
then
a win-win.
if we show them at the beginning, hey, this is the vision for the future that you're going to have with us, all of a sudden I'm in. Like, I am committed. I am the pig of breakfast as opposed
Well,
to the chicken.
I don't understand that metaphor, but okay. Does that mean I'm the bacon?
No, who's more committed to breakfast, the pig or the chicken?
I don't think either one want to be breakfast. Okay, that metaphor is making me hungry. Um, we did get a question though, as you were talking about bacon and omelets, about really sort of this approach in projectizing. I mean, it's hopefully the example on the screen. Happy to talk more about it offline. But when you think about it, like you bring someone in for marketing, and they're going to be a marketing intern. To Robert's point, being able to say, here over the course of the summer are 3 or 4 or 5 examples of real projects. So as a marketing intern, one project you might be asked to do, and the normal thing is, hey, I'd like you to do a competitive analysis. Well, yeah, that's a defined project. That's something that a hiring manager needs done anyway, and the college student is excited to do. And in this kind of a virtual environment, it's something that college student can do on his or her own. They know what the deliverable is, they can check in along the way. Again, very much like a real professional experience in a full-time role, but it's something that, again, there's no uncertainty. They know what they have to deliver. I need to research and write an article. Here's my start. Here's some questions I have. I'm going to engage the manager with along the way. Here's my deliverable. So really taking that project-based approach. I think it also ties in well to sort of Robert's last point, which is mentoring and relationship development. And I hope you're not going to talk about the pig mentoring the chicken.
No. But the point that what you just discussed in delivering that project, now if we really want to take it to the next level, when the student is done with that project, let's have them not just turn it in and deliver it. Have them give a presentation.
Oh yeah.
Have
them
them
give a, well, it's also the reflection. It's also the mutual reflecting. Like, hey, by the way, you did a great job demonstrating your empathy, or your communication skills were great, but you may have wanted to check in along the way.
Right.
100% agree with you.
And that's where that mentor really can help to develop the relationship.
Well, and it needs to be, sorry, I'm going to cut you off for 1 second.
Oh, no, that's fine.
It needs to be authentic, because when people talk about mentoring, it often feels, again, what was the term you used? The volume requiring or whatever.
Oh, volunteering.
Yeah. Or voluntelling.
Oh, volunteering, yes, that too.
Yeah, like, okay, I'm your mentor. We're going to go out to lunch and we're going to have artificial conversations about the school's basketball team because you were picked as my mentor because we went to the same school. Like, that's not real. That's not helping
Right.
anyone. So I just like when we're talking about mentoring here, this is not check the box. And sorry to cut you off.
No, and you're right. And I think that the more deliberate, dedicated, and intentional we are with the conversations that the mentor is having with the student and saying, you know what, let's talk about this project and let me get your thoughts on it. And what did you learn from it? And what could we do differently next time, or what would you do differently next time? That level of engagement is incredibly authentic because I'm asking you, Jeffrey, I'm asking you for your opinion and I'm listening. And we can do the same thing with really, taking mentoring back to the professional development. If you've identified specific things that or projects that that have certain, let's say, competencies in them, we can then build out conversations that say, hey, in that project, we were really working on, we really wanted to focus on communication skills. How do you feel that communication skills can help in your current experience? We start to
No,
get the student thinking about where they are, where they're going, and how the experience that they're having allows them to grow and develop. And through that, what are we doing? We're communicating that we care about you. We're communicating that we're investing in you. We're communicating that you are a valuable piece of this experience.
100% agree. And I think you included some great examples in here of ways to think about virtual mentoring that go
Mhm.
beyond, again, the virtual happy hours and virtual coffee.
It's got to be, I mean, I'm going to steal your words, Jeffrey. I mean, it's got to be authentic, and it's got to be. It may be a little forced at the beginning, but that's the skill of the mentor. And one of the things that we find as we work with employers is that they, voluntold you that you're going to be a mentor because you go to the same school as me, but you offered me no training as to
Yeah.
how I can be a better mentor. And so that is, again, another one of those layers where the internship experience impacts different levels of the organization. So if you're asking me to be a mentor and then you invest time and development for me to be a better mentor, what is that communicating to me as an
Yeah.
employer?
No, it's interesting. I have mixed views on that. I think, look, certainly more training is always a good thing, without a doubt, if it's relevant training and done
Right.
effectively. But one of the things we've also seen is that mentors don't necessarily need training when it's authentic and when there's a real catalyst. So one of the things we've seen through our work with a bunch of the universities is they try to build these mentoring programs between students and alums, and it winds up, to your point, forced. You're talking about the local restaurant or how bad the basketball team is. Sorry, Indiana. Um, but it's not real. What we're finding is when students are working on real projects, when there's a real catalyst for the mentoring relationship to form, it becomes much better for everyone. So as opposed to Jeff going to Robert in the marketing department saying, "You're my mentor, let's have lunch," instead it's Jeff going to Robert saying, "Hey, I just finished up this project on blank. I'd love to get your insights. I'd love to get feedback. How does this fit into what you're doing or what you're seeing?" So with 10 minutes left, want to hit a couple other things real quick. That way we have time for questions. Things to do now.
Yep.
I mean, hopefully all of that gave you all some ideas as you think about planning for the summer and things you can be doing now, even before the summer starts. But like, what are some of the ideas and things people on the call should be focused on now?
Well, I think one is identifying what is the experience that you want that student to have. And that could be, again, virtual, hybrid, traditional kind of butt in seat internship. And then be ready to pivot. When we plan for the experience, then it's easier to pivot to how we're going to deliver that experience. Be it virtual, or they're going to be in the office, or maybe, again, it's some hybrid mix in between.
Yeah.
But it's difficult when we start with, oh, well, we're going to do a virtual internship. Okay, well then how do we do that? Well, let's work, begin with the end in mind. What is the experience? What is it? What's the end result? What's our
Yeah.
goal as an employer for this thing, this experience that we're going to deliver summer 2021?
Yeah. I'd say there's two other things to think about. One is, well, three things. First, you hit one, which is flexibility. I think having flexibility is key because, again, planning for certain things, but just recognizing that the world is dynamic right now. So that flexibility is key. The second thing, I think companies, we alluded to it at the beginning, they need to be ready for renegs. They need to be doing things to fill open roles. Should there be surprises or new
Yeah.
hiring managers that have needs? Like there's things that you need to be doing right now as a plan B, just in case things don't go as expected. And by the way, worst case is you already have a great pool of candidates for next year. You have a head start on this fall's recruiting system. And look, the last thing, and we talk a lot about this, is the opportunity to start using some of these projects, some of these short-term projects, and every hiring managers have the needs now. Think about all the hiring managers that are coming to your office saying, when do the interns start? I need an extra set of hands, or we have an open full-time role we can't fill, or there's a fire we're fighting. Being able to give them opportunities to engage college students on project-based work gives them a resource, but it also helps you prepare for some of those uncertainties and teach them, et cetera. One other thing to talk about, and again, this is an initiative Robert and I have been talking about for a while, and we've really seen tremendous adoption over the past 6 months, is this opportunity to engage the ERGs or BRGs. So the employee resource groups or business resource groups. And in particular, one of the things we're seeing organizations doing is engaging them in what we call the gigs for good concept, where basically HR leaders are going to the ERG or BRG members and offering them opportunities to engage college students from backgrounds similar to their own on short-term paid professional projects. And what's great is these ERG and BRG members view it as a perk because, again, like everyone else, they have projects on their plate that may not be the best use of their time, but would be perfect for a college student, or they might be earlier in their career and have never managed before. What we also found is it really demonstrates the commitment of the company to driving real diversity, showing it's more than the banners and the t-shirt and the new website, that we as an organization are creating authentic, real professional pathways to those from backgrounds beyond where we've traditionally recruited. So while it's great that you showed up at an HBCU this year, and it's wonderful that you sort of have, again, updated the website, what the ERGs and BRGs, what your existing employees want to see is, are you doing things that are real and are creating these pathways? The other thing we found, back to the mentoring comment, is they genuinely enjoy it. They enjoy working with individuals from backgrounds similar to their own, whether they're from underrepresented populations in general, whether they're first gen, whether they went to an HBCU, whether they're a non-traditional major or a student athlete. They actually form these authentic mentor-mentee relationships without you having to do it.
And
And what that,
beyond, one thing to
please.
add to that, Jeff, is, I think that we have been for years and years and years kind of locked into this mindset that, okay, I'm the finance manager, or the finance department has a finance intern. Well, that's a pretty narrow focus, right? And if every department just thought about that, we would get just kind of those, the finance student or the mechanical engineer or the computer scientist or whatever. But when we engage at this broader spectrum, it opens up doors for liberal arts students. It opens up doors for maybe some majors that you weren't considering hiring, but now you're expanding access to students that you may not have recruited in the
And
previous year.
it's a competitive advantage for
Yeah.
you. I mean, it's a competitive advantage whether you're recruiting students that weren't otherwise thinking about your company. So if you're Pepsi, a whole bunch of students think about Pepsi as a soda company. Are they thinking about the strategy or finance or tech role? Maybe, maybe not. And by the way, that's especially true if they happen to attend a school that you haven't historically recruited at. So 100% agree. What we also found is this kind of an approach is pretty high impact. I mean, the average summer intern, I think the NACE number says they make 10 grand. And that's before the cost of all of the onboarding and training and events and all of that other stuff. With this kind of a program, you can take an ERG, you can engage an ERG, take that 10 grand and actually impact 20 to 25 students.
Yeah.
Now think about that, 20 to 25 students, your ERG or BRG members are excited. And we got a question about the difference between ERGs and BRGs. We view them interchangeably. Again, companies use both terms, but they're typically small groups for individuals from underrepresented populations or similar groups that sort of want to support one another in the workplace. So for 10 grand, you can provide opportunities to 20 to 25 students. That's real impact. And by the way, how many of them need to convert to a summer intern or a full-time hire to pay for itself, ignoring all of the value created from their work product and ignoring all of the value created for the existing employees and the improved retention? I mean, NACE talks about what, 6 to 7 grand cost per hire. If you hire 1.5 for a full-time role, it pays for itself multiples over. So again, it's high impact. And look, one thing to announce is that given the work of Robert and his team, sort of on the programming and content and tool side, and the work that we've done on sort of making it easy to launch these project-based experiences, whether it's over the course of a summer or as discrete micro internship, like we've made this easy for companies to do right now. I know my colleague shared in the chat a link to sort of what these micro internships for ERGs and gigs for good is. We're happy to chat with you more about it. And we think, again, beyond the impact, what it can do is it's something you can do right now. It'll give you insights you can prepare for this, to help you prepare for this summer. What works, what doesn't. It'll help you build a pool of candidates should there be surprises for this summer, and really get a jump start on next year's class. I think we tried to answer all the questions along the way. Robert, did I miss anything?
I don't think so. I mean, when we look at delivering an experience of value, I think that if we start with kind of that premise of our cultural transmission, meaningful work, professional development, mentoring, relationship building, that becomes kind of our guardrails, right? Like you're gonna define that for an individual company in different ways, but at least we have a framework that we're working from to make sure that we don't, go out of bounds.
Yeah. Well, with that, as we hit the top of the hour, Robert, thanks so much for joining us. To all of the attendees, thanks so much for joining. If you have other questions, both Robert and I are very, very passionate about this space and happy to help. And we both have super complicated email addresses that we included. We'll also send around a link to the presentation, slide, summary, etc., over the next 24 to 48 hours. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your week. And this concludes the webinar.